Hey everyone, my name is Nathan, and I am here today at Ripon Lodge's garden to talk about the census. Now, the census is not something we think about really very often. It happens every 10 years, but it plays a very important role in our lives. The census counts everyone in the United States, or at least it tries to, and that then determines representation in Congress. It determines where the federal government spends its funds, where the state of Virginia spends its funds, and how electoral districts are drawn. So all of that's very important. But what data does the census collect? Well, historically speaking, the information that they gathered, names, places, ages, it lets people doing research locate specific people at specific points in their lives. Now, it is only every 10 years, so there's a lot of information missing in that 10-year gap for historians, but it gives us little snapshots of an area or of a particular person's life. Now, not only is there the regular census with the names and everything, but there are also different types of censuses. Starting in the 1820s, the Census Bureau began collecting information on farming, on agriculture. And by the 1850s and 60s, they collected a lot of information on agriculture. They collected what types of crops were being grown, what types of livestock and animals, whether you had bees, what they produced. And it really lets us see over time, mostly through the 19th and 20th centuries, how farming developed in a particular area and how particular people's farms, how productive they were. So that information is also valuable. And as well, up through the 1860 census, there was a separate enslaved schedule, or slave schedule. If you'll remember, there was the 3/5 compromise written into the Constitution, where enslaved people would not be counted as a full person, but part of the system of the time, they would be counted for the purposes of allocating representatives in Congress as 3/5 of a person. But to determine how many enslaved people there were in the country, the census needed to record them. But they would not do it in the way they recorded it for European settlers and free people. They would record them only by their age, their gender, and that was it, on a list under the name of their master. And that was all that was recorded about them on the slave schedule. But that information still gives us something to work of to compare to people we know lived in an area at the time, or suspect might have lived in an area at a particular time, that were later freed, or even if they remained enslaved, it gives us a little bit of information on their lives for historical purposes. Now, all of that taken together, for example, here at Ripon Lodge, we know in 1850 that tobacco was gone. Behind me here are tobacco plants. Tobacco was gone and had been completely replaced with grain, corn, wheat, barley, rye, things like that. But we also know, for the reason we have bees here at Ripon today, that they did sell 200 pounds of honey and wax in 1850. And this farm was one of the most productive in the county. We also know, thanks to the slave schedule, that there were upwards of 20 enslaved people here at Ripon Lodge that were doing the labor that actually made that farm productive and allowed them to be successful. And we also know about the Atkinson family, who owned the plantation at the time, the size of the family, their names, ages, and whether they were in school and what their occupations were here. Over time, that information would evolve. Of course, the slave schedule disappears with the end of slavery. The 1870 census does not have one that records, or tries to, all people in an area. But the information changes over the years. Sometimes they record literacy, whether you could read or write. Sometimes it recorded whether children were in school or not. And by the 1930s, sometimes it records whether people owned radios in their homes or not, to help the country sort of gauge how the country was recovering from the Depression. So all that information can provide us a valuable picture of a time period.